raise a glass to the past and the ladies cross the ages, fallen fathers from the motherland whose lives are on the pages. And the bard who said it best when he told us all the world's a stage. So fellas, grab a glass and lift your spirits to the seventh age.
Welcome, one and all, to the Seven Ages Audio Journal. It's time once again to pour up a glass and pull up a chair as we gather together here in our very favorite corner of the Crosstime Pub, going in search of ancient mounds and unlocking clues to the culture, the myth, and the mysteries of the ancient Americas. And as always, of course, we're bringing you guys along for the ride, joining me right here in the Crosstime Pub. Very good, by the way, to be back here in the pub. Finally, are my cohorts and comrades, Mr. Jason Pentrail and James Waldo. Jason, old boy, how goes it?
Well, wrapping up some road shows, we've been burning up the miles, and while we've been gallivanting across the country, you've been collecting sky miles, I understand.
Yes, indeed, that is true. I've actually been out doing a surprising amount of archaeological field investigation myself, because in recent days I was out there in lovely Vernal, Utah. Now, what they say about Asheville, North Carolina is if you don't like the weather, wait 10 minutes, it'll change, right? You guys have heard that.
Of course.
Yeah, well, in Vernal, so I arrive, and it's about 90 degrees, but it's dry heat, so I'm not sweating yet. And it's about 80 degrees the next day. And then the third day in Vernal, the temperature drops down into the 30s that night, and it's like a high of 55.
But wow. It's a dry cold.
Yeah, but it's a dry cold, and that means your lips get all cracked, your nose starts bleeding. And then we had to head up into the high Uintas. Of course, before we went there, we went out to Blind Frog Ranch and spent a little time out there. There's quite an evidence of the indigenous American populations of ages past, if you know where to look. And my wonderful guides, Lindsay and Cactus, one of our very first days as we were going out there into the field, so to speak, they took us up onto this public land, into this area where the U.S. Forest Service had said, it's fine to take small groups of people, so we had permission to be there. But we had to hike kind of up through this field of shrub grass and then down into this little valley, then up a mountainside and up onto a cliff overlooking a canyon where there was a rock shelter up to our left. And I mean, it's the kind of spot that both you guys, if you saw it, you would immediately go, okay, yeah, I'm headed right there. And apparently people long ago did too, because there were two large rock faces which bore petroglyphs, some obviously from the historic era. One was, obviously depicting a man with a long headdress, and he is seated on a horse. Well, that's pretty clear evidence of European contact or post-European contact. But the other series of petroglyphs featured a number of stylistic motifs that would be recognized in association with what is known as the Fremont culture out there in Utah. Now, these aren't the shapes and the kinds of figures that you see at some of the more popular sites depicting what we would recognize as Fremont art. I'll get to that in a moment. Now, these were much earlier carvings, zoomorphic, anthropomorphic. Some of the stylistic motifs certainly were there. Like, for instance, Fremont art often depicts men with what appear to be horns. Some interpret it as a headdress of some kind. They definitely look like two, sharp protrusions coming out of the head. You definitely see that on some of this cave art at this location we went to. And then, of course, also this sort of a spiraling circle that you see at other sites. We don't exactly know what that is. Some think that it may represent, the idea of time, or it may just be the sun or some other celestial object. One novel proposition involves that it might be a remnant or, a recorded evidence of a supernova that was observed long ago. If that were the case, it would be really interesting, because then we would, at least be able to kind of close in on when these drawings were made. I suspect, though, that it's probably not that. It's probably something else. But, it was still fascinating, and we were actually looking at the lower portion of this rock, and almost worn away to the point of not being able to be seen. We could actually see some kind of quadrupeds. Also, what looks sort of like a gazelle of some kind. And I'm sure that these are just stylistic renderings of fauna that were known to that region, but I think more importantly, it's difficult because of their age to discern exactly what they were. But it really got me wondering. According to the U.S. Forest Service archaeologist who'd gone up there, he said, some of these carvings could be, 3,000-4,000 years. So that would put us, back again, probably into the late to middle Archaic period. But some of those carvings, they looked quite a bit older. They had been old enough that they were extremely weathered. They had patinaed. They had the look of being extremely old. And so what was plainly evident, whatever, and regardless of the ages of these petroglyphs, people had gone there for a long time, and they'd contributed to that art that was kept there in the stone. So it was really fascinating to find that. And sure enough, one of the members of our party also brought to my attention, he says, Mike, I think there's a flint ship over there. And yeah, there was a flint ship. So, this was obviously a location very much like Meadowcroft Rock Shelter or others that was used frequently by people over many thousands of years for shelter. But, unlike a lot of these sites that we see in North America, there was also an abundance of rock art that was left there. But then a couple of days later, we went to one of the more well-known rock art sites there in Utah, which is just outside Vernal. And this is the McConkey Ranch. And if you go online and you do a Google search for the McConkey Ranch, you'll see exactly what I saw while I was there. Its most famous motif is what's known as the Three Kings, even though there are actually about 5 figures depicted there. But first you show up in this little one-street kind of neighborhood. Jean McConkey, who's in her 80s, is a remarkable avocationalist archaeologist. Now, she is legally blind. And so my traveling companion, Chrissy, and I, we went up to her house, and Chrissy had already been by and met Jean. Jean comes out, I've got one hand and Chrissy's got her by the other, and we're leading her around her property. But she's got little buildings, and she takes us to each building, and she wants to show us what she's got. And in the first building, it's a artifact museum, all things that were collected from right there on her property. She's put them all in shadow boxes. It is a beautiful archaeological collection. And this is all stuff that she collected. She knew all about it. She told us about everything, where everything was found, what archaeologists who had been out there and visited, interpreted many of these artifacts to be and what they meant. Then she takes us into the library. And right there in the library, gents, I think you'll appreciate this. I found an old, dusty copy of William R. Corliss's Strange Artifacts from back in the 1970s. Now, I have no idea. Wow. Yeah, I have no idea how that got in there. But to find something like that while visiting the McConkey Ranch, and in fact, for the folks at home, sadly, you won't be able to see, but Jason and James, I'm holding up a photograph so you can see this dusty old copy.
Wow.
There it is.
Yes, in this room. And again, Jean has just kept an incredible collection, but there's so many artifacts that she has lining the walls. And it's such a treasure to be able to go to a place like that. And, this woman in her 80s, blind, and still leading tours around her property and trying to share her knowledge about the past. I was thinking about you guys the whole time. She should be awarded. She should get like a Lifetime Achievement Award because I was so impressed. But then after you do that, you hike up behind her house to the cliffs, and then you see the petroglyphs. And this is some of the most obvious Fremont style, the trapezoidal bodies, the squared off heads, the headdresses, bejeweled necklaces. You have often what appear to be grass skirts, hide shields, poles, and in some instances, and this is rather mysterious, also you have decapitated heads with tears running down the face, and of course ochre, literally just sprayed onto the rock right there to depict the blood dripping down. And so some have interpreted, was there a battle? Is this actually the story of the end of the Fremont people? Is this their beginning? We don't know. But it's quite a story left there in stone, and I got to tell you, it's well worth the trip. I hope we can all go back out to Vernal sometime, and I can show you guys.
Yeah, that sounds wild.
Yeah, it's high time that we make it out west. We've talked about this recently on the Cross Time Pub as well. We really need to get out west more and see. There's so much out there to discover, and it's one place that I've always wanted to go: Utah, Arizona, New Mexico. I've been to California, but I want to get back out there and see some of those amazing sites. And Mike, it sounds like you had a great time. Again, doing what you do best, digging deep, finding the good stuff, and bringing it back to us here on 7 Ages. So picking up where you're leaving off, we have news. It seems to be that right now in archaeology, art is a big thing, and there's lots of new discoveries going on. So tonight, I'm presenting the largest Native American cave art discovered using 3D scanning technology. Now, this was out a couple of weeks ago, but this is a really important discovery. Discovery was made while conducting 3D modeling to document an unnamed cave in Alabama. So the cave was first identified back in 1998, but it's remained confidential to protect one of the richest known Native American cave art sites in all of North America. So an extremely important site. Archaeologists applied 3D photogrammetry documentation to aid with the management and conservation of this particular cave site. So by manipulating the 3D model with varying lighting details, the data revealed previously unknown anthropomorphic glyphs, some of which are over 2 meters long. The researchers have been able to identify a 3-meter-long diamondback rattlesnake, the largest rattlesnake in all of the Americas, and a sacred animal to the indigenous people, in addition to numerous pre-contact giant images drawn in mud. The team also carried out radiocarbon dating that revealed that the cave is pre-contact, over 1,000 years old. It was visited during the time of the first millennium AD. This was a period when farming and long-term settlements began to replace that foraging style that we saw happening. And then these ancient Native Americans were modifying the landscape on a large scale, often incorporating their religious and spiritual beliefs. And that's represented in this new artwork that's been discovered. And when you can see it, you can see the detail and the size. It is very, very striking. So the team hopes that by applying photogrammetry to other sites, this could lead to further findings, which could essentially revolutionize our understanding of Native American cave art. It's something that in the past has been limited because of the ability to often make out the detail. But with these new technologies, new things that are available, we're going to hopefully see a great increase in some of these remarkable art pieces in the coming future. So right now, it's an unnamed, undisclosed location, probably for the best. But they are finding some truly remarkable pieces there, and it's exciting to see what's going to come in the next few years.
Rather synchronistic that you'd be talking about that story there, Jason, because, of course, I've been spending the last several days examining ancient art, and you probably know my affinity for that. I also find it very potentially useful because, unlike just the artifacts and the other kinds of material remnants of the past that are left behind, the art shows more than just a depiction, right, of what life might have been like. It often gives us sort of a window to their minds, maybe their souls too. Often there are very abstract features, and some of the petroglyphs that I observed out west, I'll show you guys, they have a strangely mechanistic appearance to them. And again, without getting into crazy theories, that you often see on History Channel shows and things like that, it's not crazy anymore, thanks to the pioneering work of a lot of these great archaeoastronomers who have looked at the way that ancient people observed the past and also even correlated some of those things with, celestial events. It's not impossible that some of these petroglyphs might actually represent something along the lines of timekeeping devices or celestial markers, things that marked, solstices or things along those lines. But, when you look at this cave art from Alabama, the way you're describing that, to find something in an environment like that where, unlike these petroglyphs, carved in rock, but still they're being exposed to the elements daily, caves are naturally capable of shielding this art from those elements, and there's a level of preservation that you get there that you don't get at an open, exposed site. And so I always get so excited when I hear about interpretive analysis being done in studies regarding this kind of art, pictographic or petroglyphic, of the ancient past, because, ultimately that's going to be a real key to understanding their way of life, their mindset, and the way they saw the world, and of course depicted that in their art.
Yes, absolutely. So again, as we continue to utilize technology and we move forward, it's going to, LiDAR, 3D scanning, everything that we've got going on, it's going to continue to build the archaeological world around us, and it's going to be an exciting time for those that are coming up in this discipline in the future. And so, at this point, we've developed enough so that, we're looking at outer space. We've got new telescopes up there, the James Webb. We've got all these different things that are happening, but we're also able to utilize a lot of that technology right here to discover more about archaeology and the people who have been here before us. And along those lines, we've been discussing a lot of these things over on the Patreon channel. That's right. We have the Cross Time Pub podcast over there, along with our Digging Deeper series for our patrons. And we've had a lot of people signing up. We really appreciate the support. And so at the Cross Time Pub, just so there's clarification, that is a brand new podcast. All right. So it's very similar to what we do here, but it is specifically for our Patreon subscribers. We have a great time over there at the Cross Time Pub. Lots of diverse people we've had on the show. Our most recent episode, we welcomed Mark Jones, who is a tour guide here in Charleston, South Carolina, and author of many great books. And we have many others coming up here soon for you to check out over on the Patreon. So if you're interested in joining us at the Cross Time Pub, just head on over to Patreon and search for 7 Ages Podcast. Just type it in there. You'll see it come up. Or you can go straight to 7 Ages at the Patreon window there, and you'll see it display there as well. sign up. We have 3 different tiers of membership, and we welcome everyone over there to see some of the extra bonus content that we have for you. We've been having a great time and talking to a much bigger diversity of people. We're able to get into a lot of topics that we just don't have time to cover here on the main show. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, please join us over there on the Patreon show. Also, we want to encourage everyone to continue to spread the word about this show, the 7 Ages Audio Journal. We've been seeing some growth in the show. We want to continue to do that. And we've also had some rates and reviews here recently. And we'd like to thank everyone who has taken the time to rate and review the show. Again, that really, really helps us out. That moves us up in the algorithms. It helps more people find the show and learn about what we do. I do want to highlight a couple here this week. So Melanie Rose writes, 5-star review, rigorous and fascinating. She says, I cannot get enough of this show. These guys are knowledgeable, enthusiastic, and asking insightful, important questions. To supplement their own research, they bring in experts from all over the country and engage in probing, wide-ranging, but also in-depth conversations about archaeology, prehistory, and history. I am a scientist myself, and I am impressed by how thoroughly they cover topics from so many angles and with a strong focus on evidence and learning. I'm keeping a list of all the sites I want to visit, papers I want to read, and experts I want to follow. Thank you for enriching my life. So, Melanie, thank you so much for that wonderful 5-star review. That really makes us feel good about what we're doing for you, and it helps us move up in those algorithms so that more people can find the show. Also, a shout out to Where's the Real Weatherman for his great review. Again, we certainly appreciate that. And I want to give a quick shout out to Barry Anderson, who is a listener of the show. Barry has been in contact with me, and he has a lot of great things to add to the 7 Ages field and team. So Barry, thank you for listening, and we will certainly be in touch. Now, I'm excited tonight because our sponsor, Chase Pipes from the Smoky Mountain Relic Room, teamed up with James and I, and we were able to get out on the road for our Mound Builders series, and we were able to bring you the first one of those tonight about Pinson Mounds in the beautiful state of Tennessee.
Tennessee, my goodness, I wish I could have been there with you guys. You know how much I love Tennessee, especially when we can swing by the Smoky Mountain Relic Room and see Chase and the family over there. Even though I wasn't able to be there, I'm sure I was with you in spirit. And of course, I know about the Pinson Mounds. These are some very remarkable mounds over there in Tennessee. And you know, of all the sites that we have visited, you know, and gone up through the Ohio River Valley and further south down into the southeastern mound complexes associated with the Mississippians, you know, I've never actually been over and spent a whole lot of time in Tennessee at those mound sites. So I wish I could have been with you there at Pinson Mounds. But being able to hear about this adventure is going to be the next best thing. I'm sure I'm going to feel like I'm there with you guys. And for those of you at home who would like to do likewise, if you head on over to Instagram and follow 7 Ages Research on Instagram, you can also see some of the pictures the guys were posting during their trip. And don't stop there. We're on Twitter as well, on Facebook. Jason moderates our Facebook page. And of course, also, you can find all the links to everything we do and where to find us online at 7ages.org.
A very special thanks to site manager at Pinson Mounds, Tim Poole, for having us out. And a very special thanks to Dedra Irwin. She is the state park ranger there at Pinson Mounds. She was our tour guide for the day. Very knowledgeable, very passionate. And I got to brag on her. She is an absolute gem. She is one of my favorite people that I got to meet on the trip. Just a wonderful person. And her love for history and passion for this site is bar none. She is so happy to be there, and you can really tell. And she puts forth a great effort. So I encourage everyone to get out there and see Pinson Mounds. It truly is a gem of archaeology. And again, Tennessee State Parks, you had us out. We certainly appreciate it. You can find more information at TennesseeStateParks.com. That's TNStateParks.com. They also have a current set of research series lectures going on I want to bring to everyone's attention. So if you are interested in finding out more about this, just go to tn.gov and you can find the current research in Tennessee archaeology 2022 research series. Now, this is going to be every third Thursday, April through October of 2022. So stop by, check out all of the great guests and upcoming programs, all the lectures that they're going to have for you there from the Department of Environmental and Conservation there in Tennessee. Go by there and check out these research series. I know that I will be over there and seeing what all they have to offer.
Yes, indeed. Sounds very exciting.
So tonight we are proud to present our trip to Pinson Mounds. Tonight we will be talking with State Park Ranger Dedra Irwin. This is a spectacular site The main mound there, Sauls Mound, is absolutely intimidatingly big. And this is one of the strangest and most enigmatic sites I've ever been to. You'll hear more about that from Dedra coming up here on the 7 Ages Audio Journal. Well, at long last, 7 Ages has made it back on the road. Here we are at the incredible Pinson Mounds, Western Tennessee. It has been a busy day, and here at the end of the day, we are sitting down to discuss everything that we learned at this incredibly interesting site. One of the biggest sites that I've ever been to, and certainly one of the most bizarrely interesting in every good way possible. It's an absolutely incredible site. I am joined here today by the one and only Chase Pipes. You all know him. You all love him. Great sponsor of the show from the Smoky Mountain Relic Room, everyone's favorite YouTube channel, Chasing History, the one and only Chase Pipes. Chase, welcome to the show.
Woohoo! Man, dude, I'm so excited to be on the road with you guys and 7 Agents. I mean, this has been a blast. And yes, this site is mind-bogglingly, bewilderingly amazing.
It absolutely is. You know, it's truly one of the largest, absolutely is the largest site that I have ever had the pleasure to see. And so Pinson Mounds itself is a state archaeological park that covers more than 1,200 acres. And we got to see just about all of that today. It contains at least 15 Native American mounds, probably more. In addition to the Sauls Mound, the group includes the Oxier Mound, the Twin Mounds, Mound 31. Archaeological evidence from this area suggests that the mounds were both burial and ceremonial in purpose. So Pinson Mounds has it all. They've got a lot of anomalous things that we're going to get into in our interview today, but absolutely an incredible site. Back in the 1950s and the 60s, local citizens believing in the value of this site convinced the state to purchase the land and preserve it as a park. Pinson Mounds officially became a Tennessee state park in 1974. To this day, the park contains the largest Native American middle woodland mound group in the United States. And Sauls Mound, we're going to get into that, is an absolute monument to mound builder culture here in North America. Now, we are joined today by an incredible host, someone with the knowledge of the site, and more importantly, the passion for history. Joining us today, our gracious tour guide who has given us her whole entire day, Dedra Irwin. Now, Dedra has a bachelor's degree in wildlife and fisheries biology. She also has a master's in conservation biology and wildlife and cultural sites. So Pinson is her home. She's been here for almost 2 years. She literally lives and works and breathes this site with so much passion and dedication. She is a true example of a history lover, much like everyone listening to this show. Dedra, welcome to the 7 Ages Audio Journal.
Thank you, guys. I'm so excited to be with you and getting to show you the site around.
Well, I've got to say, this is our first stop on our mound building culture tour, and it couldn't have been a better experience for us. You have truly been one of the nicest people, most knowledgeable people, and passionate people that I've met out on the road. And so I want to thank you for your time today. It's truly inspiring to see that there's still people out there that care about history the way that you do, and you just exude that. You have the passion, you have the drive and the love for it, and we have had a blast joking, talking, and learning with you here today at Pinson Mounds. So thank you so much for taking us around. We truly do appreciate it. But to kick things off, I want to know a little bit more about you. So where did your interest in archaeology come from?
Well, as a kid, you always have those passions, like I want to be a firefighter, I want to be a police officer, I like dinosaurs. Well, of course, the dinosaurs are my thing. And also Egyptian history. So as a kid, of course, the Egyptian stuff was so big in my life. I wanted to be an Egyptologist. I grew up in a little bitty town in Tennessee. I always thought, well, if I'm an archaeologist, I'll have to go overseas, and I don't want to leave my family. So I decided, well, I'm going to go another passion, go wildlife. Well, then as I got older, got in school, started getting a couple of degrees, I decided, you know what, I could do both. And so I ended up finding a place like Pinson where I get my passion for wildlife and archaeology put all in one.
Well, that's, a great way to look at it and a great way to combine those two loves. As part of the tour today, again, a very unique experience. Not only were you educating us on the site itself, but you taught us so much about the flora and fauna, and to have someone with that cross-disciplinary knowledge, it just made the tour that much greater, because we found some deer antlers out there, we found some bees, we found all kind of great things. So you were able to really focus in and kind of combine those two things into one. And the site here, again, so large, has a plethora of wildlife. I understand there's some pretty large deer here as well, right?
Oh gosh, yes.
Yeah, so we got to see all sorts of creatures out there today on this beautiful site, and I think that's magnificent that you can combine those two things together. Now, when we're talking Pinson Mounds, we're not too far from the Mississippi River. So where exactly are we located geographically as far as the site goes?
So technically, we're still on that Mississippi floodplain, but we are in one of the farthest east sites from that. We're pretty close to Jackson, Tennessee, if anybody's familiar with that. We're just right off the interstate. And it's really close to some of the Forked Deer River sites, so that goes all the way almost to the Mississippi River itself. So as the natives would have used that river system to get to this place. Like I said, we're real close to the highway, and you can just get off the interstate and come see us.
Yeah, exactly. So not too far from I-40, and definitely worth the drive. So come on out here and check it out. Now, in relation to this site, there is another one that we were able to see that's not open to the public, but as we all discussed earlier, plays a very important part to the history here at Pinson. It's about 6 miles up the river, and it's called the Johnston site. So let's begin the discussion there as we work our way into Pinson. So what is it that we find over there at the Johnston site?
So the Johnston site is kind of a unique entity. It has a lot of woodland, which correlates with the Pinson site, but also the neat thing is that it has archaic as well. One of the dates that actually goes back is 5,700.
Wow.
Yeah, so it is extremely old. It's almost 8,000 years older than the site that we're used to today. So it seems like it starts there.
Right.
And then works its way over here to the Pinson site. There have been several mounds that have been found there, and one of those mounds is actually almost an exact copy of one of the mounds that we have here at the other side at Pinson.
Now, see, that's very interesting because, as we just discussed, this is an older site, so it would appear that there was something there that made its way to Pinson, either in form or function, that meant something to the culture at that time, enough to basically kind of copy that design. So it kind of gives that impression of it being an origination site rather, that kind of allowed it to be copied over into Pinson. So when we're looking at that type of mound, are we talking platform or conical?
So most of the ones over at the Johnston site seem to be conical, except for the two largest ones. They are both tall, flat, flat-top mounds, and they actually line up with the cardinal directions as well. That kind of represents your Mississippian architecture, but these are also dated to be woodland as well.
Yeah, and that's what's so interesting is, and we're going to talk about this later in the interview, but there's a lot of things that I've seen here today at both of these sites, both Pinson and Johnston, that seem to be calling cards to a lot of what we see later in Mississippian culture. Iconography, some of the things that we've seen here today have absolutely been mind-blowing. Chase, I want to bring it over to you for a minute. Now, while we had the opportunity to go over there to the Johnston site, again, this is not open to the public, but a very important site. What were your first impressions of that site?
Really one of gratitude that the state has it. You know,
Agreed.
I mean,
Agreed.
That's something that's I'm really thankful for, because, you know, as you know, Dedra was telling us on our tour around, is that, you know, this site was in private hands for a very long time, and just the quality of the preservation. You know, you were saying the farmers that had it, you know, they didn't plow on it. They kind of, once they got it, they wanted to protect the mounds, and so there wasn't any looting into it. There wasn't any desecration. There wasn't any agriculture done on it. So I mean, it's really just, my first impression was just, thank God the state has this. You know, yeah. I mean, it's just like, that is awesome, and just how much work that still needs to be done there. Because, I mean, there's been how much excavation work has been done over there? Very little?
Very little at all. We've done some scans. There was some excavation done in the 80s, but that's been the extent of that.
Yeah, and see, there's a whole story, like you were explaining, the early chapter to Pinson is there to be explored. And so, it just strikes me as just, wow, this is such an awesome book, and it is going to be great when they get it open and start to explore the story.
Absolutely. And the magnitude of the site is just overwhelming. When I was reading, Dedra, as we were coming here, about 1,200 acres, I was like, I can envision that, but what is it really going to look like? Luckily, you had a truck because there's no way that we could have walked all of that. That's absolutely for sure. The site is huge. And not only is it huge, but the mounds here are absolutely gigantic in many cases. And so as we turn the conversation over to the Pinson site proper, just give us a general description of the landscape here, of the acreage and what is encompassed within the actual park.
So in the Pinson Mounds complex, we have a number of mounds, 17 that you can still see with your naked eye today, and a lot of them have been eroded or they have been plowed over, so we have actually lost a lot of them as well. We have our Central Mound complex, which is kind of like the heart of our site, and then we have it broken into the eastern and the western sections with that central complex. Of course, our biggest feature here at Pinson is Sauls Mound. It is actually 72 feet tall, and it is a huge base, but the weird thing is it has a conical bottom, so it's round at the bottom, and then at the top it's a square platform mound, so it's kind of got both features, and it's really weird because that kind of overlays in woodland but also Mississippian cultures. When the archaeologists first started investigating the site, they thought it was a Mississippian site. As they started digging and started dating some things and looking at the pottery shards, they actually concluded that it was a middle woodland site.
Yeah, and so again, what we're seeing here is just this very strange callback, if you will, to earlier times and earlier cultures where you see this mixing of things that we've come to distinguish, the Mississippian versus the woodland, but here those things mesh together. Now, something that I really enjoyed about our tour today, Chase, was Dedra likes to kind of surprise us with things. So she doesn't just come out and just tell us everything right off the rip, right? She likes to save little things up for us, and she did that throughout the day, and it was a lot of fun. But one thing that you just cannot appreciate is when you come into the park and you check in at the museum, and we kind of, looked at the maps and looked at the inside of the building and the museum that they have here, and then we finally got in the truck and came around the corner. And when you come around the corner and see Sauls Mound right there in front of you, awe-inspiring is not the right word. This thing is actually intimidating. The actual size of being over 70 feet tall, you just can't describe that. Folks, you have to come here and see this. It is absolutely incredible. Dedra, tell us the specifics. Now, you talked about the size of it, but how much dirt is that?
That is 8.2 million cubic feet of dirt. So if you have a whole bunch of dump trucks lined up bumper to bumper, they're going to line up for 27 miles. And if you think about it, there's 20 tons in a dump truck, and there's 27 miles of dump trucks.
And how was that deposited?
It was deposited by little bitty backpacks and like baskets. So the size of our regular day backpacks today would have been the size of the baskets they would have used back then.
Yes,
Very small.
It's absolutely incredible. It truly is a monument, and it's just right there in the middle of the park. It's the centerpiece of the park. Chase, what were your first impressions of the Sauls Mound?
Well, what was fascinating is that just recently they had taken all the trees off the mound and planted Bermuda grass in order to protect it, to keep it from eroding. And the way it's framed, you've got woods on three sides and a big open field in front. So when you turn that corner and you look, it's just all of a sudden there's this giant mound that's right there, framed beautifully. It's absolutely awe-inspiring. And the steepness of it, that was remarkable. You go to sites like Cahokia, and you're like, oh wow, Monk's Mound, that's so cool. But when you come and look at this mound, it's a entirely different, awe-inspiring look and feeling to it.
Yeah, it truly is. And not only that, but am I right when I say that it is the largest woodland mound in the United States?
Yes. It is the largest. It is the second largest mound in the United States under Cahokia.
Yeah. So again, it is a true monument to the site. This is a place that is a must-see if you're coming this way through Tennessee. I honestly tried to research it and tried to learn more, but it's one of those things you just got to come here and see it. Now, Sauls is the centerpiece, but it is not the end of the story by any means. So let's get into some of the details of other things here on the site as well, not only the mounds, but some of the archaeology as well. But in addition to Sauls, we have Mound 28, which is a large, low platform mound, very near to Sauls Mound, but it has, again, some unique archaeological and astrological alignments. So tell us a little bit about Mound 28.
So if you're standing on top of Sauls Mound, actually the other mounds actually line up with a whole bunch of different astrological things. So like the summer solstice equinox or summer solstice sunrise is Mound 28. It actually lines up, and in the beginning of that morning when the sun is rising, it actually, if you're standing on top of Sauls Mound, it lines up. Also, we don't really know a whole lot about Mound 28 because there's some interesting historical stories with that. The archaeologists that were here at that time didn't really look into that mound because there was a lot of disturbance in it. If you've ever planted potatoes, you know how hard it is to get them up out of the dirt. And one of the stories is that the settlers would plant their potatoes on the side of the mound in the steep slopes, and then they would go back when they're ready and just dig them off and let them roll to the bottom. So we call that the potato mound. But it is also one of the largest footprints on the site too. So it actually has a bigger footprint than Sauls. So that's how it kind of tells you how big it is.
Yeah, that was something that was very striking. Again, the way that the park is lined up, you sort of come around a turn and then bam, it's right there on your left-hand side. And like you said, the footprint of this thing is enormous. And was it 11 feet high? Is that correct?
13 feet high.
13 feet high. And just this beautifully shaped platform mound. And just an absolutely striking piece. Chase, what did you think about it?
Well, one of the things that I thought was really fascinating is that you have soil. You guys have done soil tests, and yes, there's a borrow pit near it, but the borrow pit only covers a third of the size of the mound of Sauls. Yeah. So what is fascinating to me is that you have soil that's been tested that's come from other areas. That is mind-blowing, but not only from other areas, but there's some soils that come from really far away.
Yeah.
Tell us about some of the soils that have traveled to this site.
So we've got some testing of some soils that come from South Georgia. We also have even the artifacts. Gosh, there's been so much travel that comes from all over the country to this site. Take some of the stuff that we found in the tombs. It's like obsidian from the Rocky Mountains. They had to cross the Rocky Mountains and the Mississippi River to get here. That is crazy to get all of that travel, plus how treacherous is just the Mississippi River, plus all the rest of it. But yeah, there's been that. There's been copper from Canada that's come down and made them with headdresses. There's sand that's from different areas. But the cool part about the sand is that we have some natural ones here as well.
One of the things that is really interesting too, and this is back to the geology of the site, is that and could be a reason for initial settlement here, is the springs that spit out yellow and red sand. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so in Native American culture, usually a cave is very significant because it's the doorway to the underworld or the spiritual realm. In West Tennessee, we don't have that. We don't have caves. We don't have the formations and the structure in the rocks to get those kinds of formations. What we do have is freshwater springs or wet weather springs that come out during the summer, winter, or when there's a heavy rainfall. The cool thing is when they start flowing, we actually have sand deposits. Because we're in West Tennessee, it's super sandy soil. Those sand deposits actually come out with the water at those springs, and they can be different colors. Here we have a almost pure white sand that'll mix with the ground and the iron content and actually turn it a little bit red. So we have different colors, and the Native Americans thought colors were very spiritual as well, depending on which one. So you've got a special color coming out of a sacred place, and those sands they would have used in their everyday life. So it's very special, and that's one of the theories that we think about why they actually chose this site.
Yeah, just one of many. This place has so many mysteries and so much more to unravel. As we continue on our tour and discussion of the mounds here on the property, the Oxier Mound, a little bit further out, but still on the property, is again something else that's very unique because it's the only one that still has a ramp connected to it on the northeastern side. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so what do we know about that other than the fact that the deer like it?
Oh, the deer absolutely love it. When I'm closing at night, I'll see them up there grazing or getting ready to bed down at night. I'm like, those are my little protectors. They're being nice. But no, the Oxier is very unique because it still has that ramp, and the ramp actually is kind of like Mound 28. It lines up with the summer solstice sunrise. So it's got the orientations with it too. It is actually more of a Mississippian type mound construction because it is that square. It's got the corners. It's a flat top. It's also got a square-ish base. There's been a little runoff, so it's kind of rounded, but it's still square-ish base. But it is strictly got woodland artifacts on it, woodland pottery. One of the neat things that was found on top of it is a 30-centimeter thick clay platform, pretty much like a table or like they made a rug or something, and actually did their ceremonies on top of that. It was 30 feet by 20 feet. So that's a lot of pure red clay that they actually made that with.
Yeah, that's incredible. And then I understand that on the tour, off in the distance, you said there were some lower mounds that were recently tested for dating that possibly were related to Mississippian time period. Is that correct?
So over there in that section, it's the Cochrane site. That is actually where we found one of the hearths in 2019. It's actually just the tad bit to the left of those mound sites that you're kind of talking about. We haven't actually tested those. We just scanned those, and the data's still being processed on that. But the hearth actually has a walkway that leads right to the bottom of Oxier Mound, which is really neat. And we do think that has Mississippian because we've actually found a piece of corn in it.
Ah, okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Now, is that a walkway that you can see with radar or?
Yes, so we used LiDAR to pick that up underneath the ground. So it's underneath the plow zone.
That's so cool.
Yeah, just one of many surprises here at Pinson. Again, a massive site that has an incredible amount of history. Now, right next to the Oxier Mound is probably one of the most enigmatic parts of the park, truly unique, the Twin Mounds. Give us the general description of the Twin Mounds as far as their size and their composition, and give us the history of what we know so far about it.
So the Twin Mounds is very unique on the site. It is a double conical mound, so two round mounds put together. There has been an excavation on the northern Twin, so the mound that's up north, and the southern Twin has not been touched. There were 6 tombs found in it, 4 of which were opened, and there were several remains. One of them had 8 females in it. They were all about 20 to 30 years of age. And they all had gorgeous beadwork and headdresses with the copper sheets on them. They even had marginella beads. One of the ladies that was in the tomb had 5 strands of freshwater pearls around her neck.
Wow, that's incredible. And so, what do we know about that? Is there speculation? Is there theories? Or were they possibly leaders of some sort? Were they priestesses? I mean, any ideas or thoughts on the importance of those burials?
There's several different theories. Some of them are more nicer than others.
Sure, I understand. Yeah.
And, but the weird thing is, those are the youngest group. The other tombs have people that are in them that are 50 plus years old, and that's very old for that time period. One of the tombs actually is very weird shaped because it's very wide and very tall, but it's a square shape. And this is where we find a burial of 4 men. They are all around 49 to 56 years of age, and 3 of them are laid in a north-south direction. The other one is laid in an east-west direction, so they're actually crossing.
Wow.
That is really strange.
It's super weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the whole place, it just, there's this vibe of mystery, and I don't want to, kind of just throw words out there and make things up, but it truly is a mysterious and strange site, from the burials to the iconography to just the overall feel of the way that it's laid out. It's a very, very striking and beautiful, but very unusual site. Out of all of the mound sites that I visited, and I visited quite a few of them, this is certainly the most enigmatic site that I've been to, and certainly the largest. Now, in addition to those findings of that very strange burial in the way that they're laid in there and interred, what type of artifacts were found in that burial?
So with like the females, I said there's copper beads, there was marginella shell beads that were made. In the male's tomb, there was actually a mica sheet mirror. So you would take a sheet of mica's very thin anyways. It's almost like paper when you peel it apart. They put a piece of wood on the back of that, and then it would actually kind of show your reflection. Another thing was a schist pendant. So that's a type of rock, and it was actually cut into a pendant that you actually would wear on your chest, just like a necklace today. And then the most interesting artifact that I think is super interesting is 2 sets of knee rattles. So these were conical discs. One side was actually decorated. The other side was clean and it wasn't decorated. Inside there were yellow crystal gems that were actually put inside there, and they would actually be used like a baby rattle or a macarena. They would be attached to the knees, and when they would dance and do their ceremonies, they would actually make noise.
Wow.
But the weird thing is they're made out of human cranial bone.
Whoa. Wow. So we're talking about something that was an overt ritual object.
Yes.
I mean, obviously this carried some kind of hugely great significance to whoever the wearer was. Now, in addition to the fact that they're made from human bone, and that they have what I can only imagine would be sacred crystals from a far away, because those yellow crystals, they don't occur here naturally, right?
No, the closest deposit is actually at Hot Springs, Arkansas, and it's just a yellow crystal formation. It's really common there, but nothing here.
So obviously this was something that was imported and probably very, very important to the wearer. Now, in addition to the fact that they're made from such rare materials, the iconography or the engravings that appear on each of them are entirely unique. I've seen a lot of Mississippian-esque type things, woodland things that kind of hint at Mississippianism that comes later, but I've never seen anything like these two, and they're completely distinctly different. So it's going to be kind of hard to describe this, in an audio format. And I would certainly encourage you, we're going to post pictures on our social media. You'll be able to see these implements, reproductions of them, and we'll get those posted so that you can actually see the designs. And these designs have kind of become the calling card for the park, right? It's part of the image of the park.
Yeah, so we use it on a lot of our iconography, our stuff that we show in the gift shop and stuff like that. But just the storytelling that this artwork can show is just phenomenal.
Well, let's do our very best to try to kind of describe them a little bit. So one, I would say, if I had to describe it, is a cross between an avian type image and something like Cthulhu.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that definitely. So there is a large central eye, it seems like, in the center, but it's more of a pulled to one side. And then it has almost like a beak coming out of that small side. And then it has a lot of, and both of these are very, very abstract as well. There's some wings that go out. There are some it's almost like when the wings are flapping, it's like they can see the air current. It's almost crazy like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's really just us describing it does not do this art justice.
No, this is, again, something that you need to see. And again, on the social media outlets, you'll be able to see some reproductions of this image. And then on the other image, it's even more enigmatic because it has, 3 very distinct markers that look kind of like stars, diamond-shaped stars. Other parts of it kind of flow like almost in a feline type design, but again, it's really up to the interpreter, up to the eye, but it's something that you can literally turn 360 degrees and get a different vantage point and try to figure out what exactly these images are. But they are very striking, and what really caught my attention was it's almost like what you see the Mississippian become later. And I think that's what's most endearing to me about this site here, is the fact that it almost seems as if it's a blueprint for things later to come, and I find that to be absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, with all the research that's left to be done here at Pinson, there's no telling what we can find and what stories we can bring ends to.
Yeah, Chase, I want to come over to you for a minute because, again, as we come out to these sites, Chasing History, 7 Ages Audio Journal, out here on the road again to speak with people like Dedra, to get out here and see these sites. Sauls Mound, absolutely incredible. But then when we get to the other parts of the property and we're able to see Oxier, and then you get back there to the Twin Mounds, having the story when we arrived there today of knowing what was found in those mounds, what were your impressions?
I mean, it's just it's a reoccurring theme of this site. I mean, it is literally mind-blowing. I mean, it's incredible what the story that this site has already told and still has to tell. You know, that's what I think is the most exciting part about this site is that there's still a huge story to tell. And, you know, you get into the iconography of the rattles. I mean, you know, it seems like things that you would see later in the Mississippian world have their origin story here, you know, from the artwork to mound construction to it's absolutely mind-blowing.
It truly is. And as we're going to save the really odd things, we're going to save those for the end here. But before we get further into the site, I kind of want to return to what we talked about at the beginning of the interview, Dedra. So this site, being here, working here, is very personal for you and very meaningful to you. So let's go back and talk about your connection to this site. Why is Pinson home to you?
I feel like that my goal is to share this story with the public. I mean, I am just personally invested because I want to know what went on, and I love just sharing that knowledge with the public and the park and personnel. They all love it as well. But the reason that I love it so much is I can see the little changes personally that I've made to this site. I can help conserve it. I can help pick up sticks off the side of the road and make sure that nothing's going to happen to it. It's places like Pinson that actually inspire those types of people to get on board with helping this place get to where it's going.
I think that's beautifully said. And again, as we were out here today, your passion and commitment to this site was obvious, and it's just absolutely incredible to have people like you working on sites as incredible as Pinson. And so again, as we move further into the site, we've really only scratched the surface because the excavation of Pinson is still very minimal. What are the estimates to this point on the degree to which the site's been excavated?
Gosh, the site proper, Pinson itself, is probably, I'd say the mounds are probably 50% excavated, but the grounds itself, there's so much to be done. One thing about Pinson is that it was very highly mound oriented, the excavations were, and so a lot of the open grounds were not even touched. So we don't know what's around the mounds. We know what's in the mounds, but we don't know what's around. And that helps us tell the complete story of the people who built this place and maybe even lived here while they were building it.
Sure. And yeah, that was a big topic of conversation as we were moving about today, was how many people would it have taken to build something on this scale? And then how many people would a site like this have supported? So just like you said, you know, it seems that most of the excavation has been focused on the mounds themselves, but we haven't even touched the living sites, the surrounding sites, the trade, and moving up and down different cultures and different groups. It's really just barely been scratched the surface of Pinson. And so there's so much more to the story. And with that, we have to get into a few more of the really anomalous parts of the site. Again, folks, there are so many mounds here that I feel like we've completed the entire week's trip here in one site, because I have never seen this many mounds in one site with this big of a variety in shape, size, and construction. There's Sauls Mound, that is just an absolute mountain. And then there's Mound 28, which has a footprint that is just enormous. And then you've got, conical mounds, you've got flat top mounds, you've got small mounds, you've got little mounds on the bluffs, you've got mounds that haven't even been touched by excavation or archaeology. And then we get into the really strange things, such as the fact that this is the only mound site that I have ever been to that has a bird effigy mound. Just to throw it in there with everything else.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that particular one for a moment. We had the opportunity to see it. Again, these things are hard to see from the ground, but you can certainly see the shape of it, very prominent and distinct. So what do we know about this bird effigy mound?
So not a whole lot. There was in the center of the bird where the heart would have been, there was a man buried there. He was an elderly man, probably in his 40s to 50s, and we didn't really find a whole lot with him, but that's because it caved in, and there was a lot of dirt and debris that had fell in, and it probably eroded some of the artifacts that were with him. A couple of the things that we did find were some pottery shards to help us date it to the woodland period, and then a couple of point shards as well. So just a couple of arrowhead broken points. The bird, though, is just immaculate. It's been plowed over, so there is some degradation to the back of the site, the back of the bird. But on a topo map, if you look at it from the sky down, it is just gorgeous. You can definitely tell the triangular shape with the wings and the tail feathers at the back. Another weird thing is that we were talking about that on the talk around and walking around. It almost looks like it's coming out of the gorge, like it's almost flying into the site.
Yes, and then there's this very steep gorge that really is butted up right to the tail feathers of this magnificent effigy. And as soon as we walked over that portion, you look down and you're just like, oh, I get it. Like, it's almost as if this was intentionally put right in that spot for that reason. And it's almost kind of breathtaking because you're like, oh, wow, has such an impact. And I think that's exactly what it was meant to do. And what's interesting is just to the left of that, there's a very unique feature, again, one of many here at the site that we just keep raising question marks for, is there's an earthen embankment with another mound that almost has like what would have been a pond feature or a water feature of some sort.
Yeah, so it's really weird because we have a mound inside this enclosure. It's huge. It's inside of this earthen embankment is about 60 acres. So it's a lot of land that's in between there. Over time, it's grown up. We've got trees inside of it now. But the archaeologists believe that as they actually built this, they stored up water. And so the water would actually raise up and have a line close to the base of that mound. So the mound wouldn't have been underwater, but it was like an aqueduct and it actually held water. Don't know if it was used for drinking or what, but I mean, to hold this many people here with this amount of mound work, got to have some water somewhere.
Absolutely. And so again, that bird effigy mound is in very close relation to that feature. And then the hits just keep coming, Chase, because next we find a teardrop shaped mound. So what are your thoughts on that one?
It's the same thing over and over. It's bewildering.
It is.
Like, what are you doing here?
Yes. So, Dedra, tell us what you know so far about the teardrop mound and its relation to Sauls Mound, and any thoughts on what is the deal with that one?
I have literally no idea. But we do have some archaeological evidence with it. It was a crematorial site, so and it wasn't even on the mound. It was beside the mound. So there's not a whole lot to go on because we haven't really got into that mound as much. Of course, it's almost right, literally beside Sauls. It's only like 100 feet at the base of Sauls. But the teardrop is really weird, and the drop, it's kind of upside down. Most teardrops you see in media today they're kind of coming from the side, the point's upward. This one's pointing down, and it's actually pointing to another mound, Mound 17. That one has not been excavated because it was highly plowed over. It was just almost a 3-foot tall mound, so it's going to be very low. And the farmers, when the settlers got here, they didn't really understand what this site was. And of course, they were just trying to put food on their table for their family. So they did like plow it over and try to get some more farmland out of it. So I don't blame them for what they were doing. But it does kind of hinder the archaeological evidence for it because they didn't want to touch that mound because of this disturbance.
Yeah, and that makes sense. While we're on that topic, before we get to our last enigma here at the site, do you have any estimate or idea of how many of the property's mounds were plowed over and may be lost? I know when we were driving around today, you could kind of see the little bumps on the landscape of what could certainly be the remnants of plowed over mounds, but is there any estimate on how many have been lost here at the site?
There's a couple different estimates, the lowest number being about 35, the highest number being about 51.
Wow.
So that's still, though, that's a lot of lost data and the lost artifacts that we might ever get back. But one thing that's really neat is the LiDAR scanning has helped us drop that number down, and we can actually see them with helpful data.
Yeah, and another great advent of technology, and we're fortunate at sites like this to have that kind of data. Now, as we kind of wrap up our discussion here on Pinson, we have one more sort of strange and anomalous feature, which is known as the duck's nest. You took us down there last stop of the day, and it is butted up to what was the original meander of the river at the time. And so what do we find at this bizarre spot of the duck's nest?
So just to give your listeners an idea about this duck's nest, it would have to be at least a 100-foot tall duck to sit on this nest. It's about 30 feet across. It's a slight bowl. So if you got a soup bowl or something, picture that idea. And then at the back of it, it just drops off to the river. What is in the middle of it is actually some remnants of a fire. We're not for sure if it was one big fire over several hours or lots of fires over years. Personally, I think it's going to be the last of the two, the one fire, small fires over years, because that site is close to the river and it's close to one of the canoe stops that we believe that the natives would have used to get off the river and come to this site. So it could have been like, say, a lighthouse is used today to mark a spot or a settlement of some kind. Maybe that's what they used it at for this site.
Yeah, and that's, a really interesting way of thinking about it, because as it is positioned right there on the river, I mean, you could see how you could just pull right up, follow the light, and then you're going to go up into this magnificent ceremonial center because you make your way up to higher ground, up to Sauls, which is the centerpiece of the site. It's amazing, and it would make perfect sense. What do you think about the duck's nest there, Chase?
Well, what's neat is you really got to look at the geography of the ground and understand why things are here. All of these mounds are kind of like on this little finger that just pokes out into the Mississippi floodplain. And it's kind of like the last little bit of finger before you get to that other, feature. And it's fascinating to sit and think of, the amount of people that are coming off of that floodplain onto this higher ground. And here is this, magnificent ceremonial center. I
told you it was a lot.
I'm telling you, it's bewildering. It is absolutely mind-blowing. I mean, that was, believe it or not, that was probably my favorite place to visit, because you could just imagine. I do agree. I like the mini fires over a longer period of time. This is more of a lighthouse feature. I've never heard of anything even remotely like this, existing on any other sites. I mean, it's like it's its own unique thing to this site. But I mean, it really is. It's this big, huge bowl right on the edge of where that river used to be. Now, the river's not there anymore. Back in the 30s, the state or the federal government...
Feds actually channelized the river completely all the way to the Mississippi River.
Right. So just basically made a big ditch and said, you're going to flow in this ditch. And so when you go there now, it's just a wood line, but you can sit there and you can imagine standing there and seeing the floodplain and people coming up. And one question I did have is that, so, you think it's a canoe stop. How is there any evidence to say this was a possible canoe stop, or it just kind of makes sense by looking at the lay of the land?
There have been some just scattered artifacts down in that section that we were looking at. There's been no there's a canoe here,
right?
Because there's just so hard to find anyways. But there were scattered artifacts, just general pottery shards. Maybe somebody dropped a vessel getting out of their boat.
Right, things that people would lose getting out.
And that's one of the easiest spots, because if you go further north, the bluff kind of gets up to 60, 70, 90 feet tall, and you ain't parking a canoe there.
Right.
Down lower, there's a couple of different places where they could have. I mean, if there was tons of people, they're going to have multiple stops. But that's the one that makes the most sense at this location.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it like I've said this whole time, and I'm really speechless about this whole site, because it is absolutely not what I was expecting, and what I was able to learn from Dedra and from the tour. It has absolutely blown my mind, which is hard to do.
Yeah, I mean, I truly am kind of like speechless. I'm not sure how to wrap it up, because it's just so much information that I'm like, this is multiple lifetimes worth of research that could be done on this one site, and it's just incredible. And
I think that is the coolest thing about this site is that there's literally 150, 200 years worth of research that can be done on this site. I mean, this story is just now being told, and the work that you're doing to help to tell that story, I'm blown away with. I mean, you guys really have something special here, and people need to. It's not far off the interstate. It's going to seem like it's not far off the interstate. You need to come visit this site, because I promise you, this will blow your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And in addition to that research and everything that's going on here, Dedra, you guys have some really great features and state-of-the-art things. You have a laboratory built right into the museum here. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so the museum is funny. If you walk up and don't know what you're looking for, the museum is actually a man-made mound, or a historical made mound, let's put it that way, that we built. It's a concrete bunker, and we put dirt on the sides of it to represent one of the mounds here. Downstairs is a fully functioning archaeological laboratory. And so we have archaeological field schools that come out during the summer. We've had all kinds of institutions here, from just state institutions to universities and other types of that. And then we also have a group camp where those people can actually stay. So everything's right here in-house. And you can actually, university students, people that are just getting started in their archaeological work can come out with their universities and do some research here.
Yeah, and to have that sort of thing built right into a site this important, I think, is absolutely incredible, and really sets the bar for other sites. Now, in addition to that, you have a lot of special programs that you offer throughout the year. Highlight some of those special opportunities you have.
Yeah, so in the summertime, every single weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we offer interpretive programming, whether that be strictly archaeological or even some wildlife stuff that I like to do. We do, especially right now, the spring plant hikes are awesome, because we got some stuff down in the swamp that only blooms in the swamp at this time of the year. We have stuff oriented to the archaeological stuff. We have a junior ranger camp that we do, and a junior archaeological camp where the kids can come and be junior archaeologists and go out and find cool stuff with us. But our biggest event of the year is called ArchaeoFest. So we just have a celebration of archaeological investigations here and all over Tennessee. We have vendors that set up in the yard between Sauls and the museum. I say yard, it is huge field, and it gets packed. We have Native American dancers that come, musicians that play. We even have the Birds of Prey shows that come down, so you get to see those interact. And we even set a section off for Native American ball games. So stickball, all that kind of stuff, you get to actually play that. Then we have demonstrators that come out and do woodworking, or we do napping, as well as pottery demonstrations as well. So it's not just a vendor kind of thing. It is more of an educational tool for you guys and other people like your listeners to come out and see those kind of things being worked in front of them, and actually get to ask questions of the people and how we know that these people live the way they did.
Yeah, incredible. And, I would really hope to be able to attend one of those Archeo Day events in the future. It sounds wonderful and something we would certainly like to be a part of. Dedra, if people are interested in knowing more about the site, where can they find more information online, and how can they contact you?
So definitely on our website, the simplest way to do that is just Google Pinson Mounds State Park. We are on the Tennessee State Park website. And also our Facebook page. We post all of our programming. So if we have, like, say, golf cart tours that we're doing. So, like, you guys got to ride around in the truck today because it's kind of windy. But I do those golf cart tours as well, and we get to go in those little sections just like you guys did today. So if your listeners are interested in that, you can check our website and actually just call us and ask about our programming. We post flyers of our programming in the summertime. So we'll have flyers going up the next couple of weeks, and we start those in May. So we've got all that coming up. And then if anybody wants to book a personal tour or anything like that, they can just call the office.
Great. And those are all great options. I think everybody should certainly take those opportunities when given. We've been speaking today with Dedra Irwin, State Park Ranger here at Pinson Mounds and Tour Guide Extraordinaire. Dedra, thank you so much for joining us here on the 7 Ages Audio Journal.
Oh, I have been honored, and I'm so glad, and I hope you guys come back because you got more stuff to learn.
Absolutely. On behalf of Chase Pipes and the entire 7 Ages Research Associate team, I am Jason Pentrail. Thank you for joining us on this very special edition of the 7 Ages Audio Journal live from the road at Pinson Mounds, Tennessee.
Fascinating interview. I gotta say, you guys did a good job, a great job as always. Those of you passing through Tennessee, be on the lookout for the Pinson Mounds State Archaeological Park. They're going to be about 2.5 miles east of the town of, well, Pinson, after which they're named, and approximately 10 miles southeast of Jackson, but definitely worth the visit. And guys, next time you make your way over there, I hope to be able to be joining you and be right there in person, not merely in spirit.
So, yeah, we hope that too. And in a way, I was sort of there in spirit because I actually wasn't at Pinson with Jason and Chase, but, later on in the trip. So, so I feel you there. I missed out. I feel like I missed out on something kind of special.
Yeah, I guess we kind of have that in common, James. And indeed, I'm very glad that Chase Pipes, the one and only, was out there on the road with Jason, keeping him company for that leg of the journey. You know, it doesn't matter where we go or who joins us, as long as we have that same objective in mind, learning about the past, sharing that knowledge with each other, and of course, always sharing that with you guys at home. I think we're doing a pretty good job, and so I want to thank both of you guys, as always, for your ongoing efforts as avocationalist archaeologists, and also thanks to all the many archaeologists, geologists, historians, and other specialists who share their knowledge with us every week right here on this podcast as we convene together in the Crosstime Pub and present to you the 7 Ages Audio Journal. We will catch you guys again next time. On behalf of Jason Pentrail, James Waldo, and yours truly, Micah Hanks, it is the 7 Ages Audio Journal, and we'll catch you guys next time.